What are the castles and what are the up and coming castles in the cloud right now?
The castles project started, Emily, with a question like, how can you beat Amazon, Google, and Azure in the cloud game? Because they seem to be so huge and have so much revenue. Is there room for startups? Is there room for VCs to keep investing in these markets? And we've seen companies like Databricks, that's going to be on their show later, raise huge amounts of money and compete successfully head to head against Amazon, Google, and Azure in kind of the Spark ecosystem. So you look at companies like Databricks, Snowflake, Elastic, security companies like Snyk. There's a ton of companies out there that are able to either do something like compete head to head against Amazon and something like databases, or do something like multi-cloud like HashiCorp across Azure, Google, and Amazon, obviously. So a couple of different ways to play it. Either choose a market or choose a strategy.
I'm actually going to be interviewing the CEO of Databricks right after you, Jerry. So thanks so much for the layup. When it comes to the big incumbents, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, do you see the likelihood of real disruption there? One of them potentially being unseated or dethroned, if you will, to use the metaphor?
To dethrone the castle metaphor, I don't see a fourth or fifth hyperscale cloud provider anytime soon. Clearly, in other geographies like Asia, Ali Cloud and other vendors will have local prominence. But in terms of these hyperscale clouds, the big three are pretty much entrenched. And I think you might have fourth or fifth cloud providers, Oracle, DigitalOcean, et cetera. But I think the next generation of clouds will look very different. Either A, you're looking at decentralized. So there's a bunch of talk about blockchain and Web3, so decentralized clouds. I think two, vertical clouds, financial services, gaming, healthcare, so focused niches for clouds. Or third is like the edge. I think this whole decentralized edge computing could be a trend as well. So companies like Cloudflare or Fastly do very well at the edge with their own network. And Cato Networks, a company in the Greylock portfolio, does a similar approach, pushing compute to the edge closer to the end users. So I don't see a centralized hyperscale cloud coming anytime soon, but there's certain ways to play against the big three in different strategies.
So when it comes to where Greylock is placing its bets, where do you think the money's at? Where do you think the most innovation is going to come from when you look at startups that are navigating this new world or disrupting this world?
Yeah, I think there's either two plays, like I said, Emily. Either A, you pick a market that's super interesting. An example, we're betting on a company called Chronosphere that's in the observability market. So we've heard of companies like Datadog or Splunk around measuring your applications. Chronosphere is one of these plays that goes head to head against the existing leaders like Datadog, but also against the large cloud vendors and their offerings. The second thing, we're looking at deep IP. So clearly the cloud vendors have huge reach, huge scale, and tons of dollars and developer attention. But if you can build something that's kind of deep IP, hard technology, you can actually crack the moat, if you will. So I think Databricks and Snowflake have done a great job in kind of the real-time, the database space. But the move towards real-time analytics, and you've seen companies like Confluent that monetize Kafka, or another company in the Greylock portfolio called Rockset, kind of real-time analytics. So you'll see companies taking an approach saying, hey, where is a great market like observability? Or where's an area I can build really hard IP and have a technology advantage? And I still believe, or maybe some old-fashioned, Emily, if you have deep IP, you can still win against the big Davids out there. The big Goliaths out there if you're little David.
Now, the cloud is obviously huge and getting bigger, in part because of remote work, the trend toward hybrid work, the fact that more companies will be working in the office and at home, potentially forever. I'm really curious how you think this is going to change Silicon Valley for the long term. I've spoken to your partner, Reid Hoffman, about how over the last 18 months, you guys have been doing some deals where you're never meeting the entrepreneur in person because that's just how it was. Now we're seeing all of these huge companies pushing back their returns to work. Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, all now 2022. I spoke to venture capitalist Bill Gurley about how he thinks this is going to change Silicon Valley for good. Take a quick listen to what Bill had to say.
The competitive pressure to not go back amongst engineering is huge, and so I don't think anyone's going to be able to mandate it other than a very small company.
So he's basically saying almost any company won't be able to get engineers back in the office. Would you agree with that? And what does that mean going forward?
I think it'd be a mix. I think you'll see a category of companies still have a strong headquarter culture. I think with the CEOs back in the office, people want to be around the CEO or the founders. But, for sure, there's going to be a large percentage of the workforce, Emily, that will not want to go back to the office. And I think what happens is the skills that you need to succeed as developer or a product manager for the new workforce is very different. So before, maybe in-person communication was a skill to have. Now written communication, asynchronous communication, video communication, that becomes more powerful. So before, maybe a great PowerPoint presenter was rewarded for his ability or her ability to communicate. Now you can write good memos, communicate via Slack, and communicate through other tools. That's going to be a better skill to have. And so I think the new workforce is going to basically learn on a new set of tools. So we learned on like email and Microsoft Office. The new workforce is going to be on Slack, on Zoom, on a whole set of tools that are going to be key to their day-to-day job. So I think, there'll be a cadre of folks back in the office, Emily, but I think there'll be a generation of folks that don't come in, and the skills you need to succeed in that workforce look slightly different than the skills you have today.